You can't know what the other person is thinking or feeling, even if you are making a prediction because of past experiences. That really limits who they are. You want to
Yeah.
give them the opportunity to show up where they are. This also makes me think about our sex life, because if conflict is going on, intimacy is going to be next to impossible. What is the last thing that you can think of that might make your relationship stronger? Well, I have a story that completely caught me by surprise, but as I brought it to God, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing," and it's a good thing. So, in our family, we had a death of a loved one, we had health issues with another one. We've had a lot going on, and I had extended family member come to me, and they wanted to ask me some questions. And first I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. Maybe it's about relationships. I appreciate that you trust me. I'm thinking all of this in my head. But that was not the scenario as it played out. They were concerned about some of the things that I had said, some of my word choices. So the relationship issue they were having wasn't with someone else, it was with
Wow.
me. And in the middle of it, I'm like, oh God, I hope my face is pleasant right now, because I do want to receive this. I don't want to act shocked, and I do value them and want to handle this well. And truly, they did an amazing job. It was almost like a textbook
Wow. That's
confrontation
so
of
great.
being respectful and saying, I want to use I feel statements, and I just don't understand. And that's why I'm bringing it to you. You can help me understand. And hey, they were super specific. And I had to make sure I wasn't on the defensive, like over explaining why I did what I did. I needed to make sure I didn't minimize their feelings, because one of the scenarios was probably 3 years old, but they said quickly. Now, I haven't been holding on to that, but I thought I would just mention it. So, as it turns out, we hugged, we thanked each other, we like recommitted to stay close and enjoy
Oh, I
each
love it.
other's company, and it was the best scenario of a confrontation done well. And that's what I know strengthens relationships and certainly will strengthen marriages. And
Yeah.
Katieann, this is one of your specialties. You get called on even in the church community and regionally to navigate this with other people in ministry. So I have some questions for you today to give us some steps and some feedback here. And our overarching question is, how does resolving conflict well strengthen your connection? So the first question for you specifically, what does doing confrontation poorly look like? This is the what not to do ideas.
And unfortunately, the majority of people have not been taught or have learned how to have healthy confrontation. And
Mm-hmm.
confrontation is a healthy function of relationships, close connections.
Yeah.
If you're not having conflict, then one of you is not telling the truth. So conflict needs to become a part of, not that, we're looking for all the conflicts, but
Mhm.
we are showing up boldly in conflict with courage to tell the truth. But
Mhm.
oftentimes it looks like a lot of anxiety. You can feel it in your body. If you've ever had someone say, hey, I need to have a conversation with you later, and they don't set a date. And so for an
Ooh.
unended amount of time, you are replaying, rehearsing, and having these conversations with this person in your head. That's a good sign that you
Mhm.
haven't experienced healthy confrontation very much in your life. So it looks like anxiety, it looks like walking on eggshells so people don't
Mhm.
have a problem with you. So it's passive aggressive or it's passive. It's a power competition. It is a, last resort. Like it's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Mm.
You hear that. That's it. That's the final straw.
Oh.
Those are oftentimes what leads to unhealthy confrontation. And then we get into these scenarios and we're so revved up, we're so fired up that instead of thoughtfully articulating what we're experiencing, we just give
Mhm.
them a list of everything
Mhm.
that is wrong with them and everything that they've ever done. And it is just
Yeah.
a perfect recipe for disconnect. And
Mm.
so really conflict is a skill that needs to be taught and needs to be learned and it needs to be practiced. It's like skiing. You can't,
Mm.
I've not really met anyone that just put on a pair of skis and could, you know, ski down a black diamond. It's a skill that takes time to learn and practice
Yeah.
and grow in. And so a lot of people would rather just avoid it. And so
Mm.
their survival mechanisms are to do that. So you have passive aggressive, and you have aggressive
Yeah.
communication styles that show up in confrontation when it's done poorly.
Right, and it's like they either shut down or blow up. They don't necessarily have that middle of the ground that's measured of what they're actually saying, how they are interacting, responding, the whole thing. I get the picture of a pressure cooker, and I
Yes.
have not used one, but I've witnessed them, and oh my goodness, if it's opened at the wrong time, it can
Yep.
explode all over the ceiling and not pretty. And
Right.
usually if it goes bad, they never want to be in that place
The last
again.
time I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I believe that there are benefits if it's a regular part of how you interact. So, what are some of the benefits when this is ongoing?
Yeah. So healthy confrontation is such a beautiful thing when you have two people committed to the process, or you have a
Mm.
relationship in your life like the story you told, where the goal wasn't just to be right, it was to have good, clear communication
Yeah.
so that connection and relationship could be restored. And so when you are practicing healthy confrontation, the benefits are huge. One, anxiety is greatly reduced in the relationship. It quickly gives no room for anxiety and that voice and that rehearsing to
Hmm.
keep going. You feel closer. Like when you tell somebody the truth, it can feel so scary to tell them the truth. But then when they respond well and loving, it just strengthens that bond and that closeness. And the respect, the level of respect just goes up
Yeah.
another level. And then it really creates a place where you can really think about having a safe future together, growing
Mhm.
together. I know for my husband and I, like telling each other the truth kindly, respectfully, we use the tools, and it has only strengthened our bond
Mhm.
and created this excitement for what's to come next in our lives because we're not being bogged down by all the scary things that, typically can fill a marriage because we are practicing healthy confrontation.
You've used a phrase that I love, and I know it's a tool, but maybe other people don't understand it. And that is, we tell the truth. Because in a broader perspective, well, I'm just going to tell them the truth, which usually means I'm going to put them in their place and they've got to see it my way, and my way is the way. So I know that's not what you mean. Will you unpack a little more what tell the truth means in how you're using it?
Yeah. So oftentimes when people say use it like you, the example you just gave,
Mhm.
it means that I'm going to tell the other person all the things that are wrong with them and all the things that they've ever done. And it's very aggressive and attacking. But when I'm
Yeah.
talking about telling the truth, I'm talking about expressing and communicating the impact of somebody's actions. And so we use this phrase often with our kids and our relationships, our important relationships as we're navigating is I like to talk about intent versus impact. And so what
Mm.
happens is when we get into telling somebody about their intent and we've decided we know their heart, their intent, we've just invited disrespect and disconnect into the relationship. So when I talk about telling the truth, I am truthfully communicating the impact of their actions, how it
Mm.
impacted me, how I felt. I felt hurt when you forgot this really important appointment that you said you would be there for. So I didn't go, you don't love me, I'm not enough. If weren't so lazy, that is disrespect, that is
Yeah.
inviting disconnect, and it's creating a really hostile environment. Nobody was going to want to be vulnerable and truthful in that. And so, in intent versus impact, you are telling the truth about how it impacted you in your heart and how you feel, and not trying to get into the intent. This is your intent. That's all assumption, and it's not our place.
You can't know what the other person is thinking or feeling, even if you are making a prediction because of past experiences. That really limits who they are. You want to
Yep.
give them the opportunity to show up where they are. This also makes me think about our sex life because if conflict is going on, intimacy is going to be next to impossible.
Yep.
And if this is just where people live day in, day out with conflict, with avoidance, with any of those negative communication styles, then intimacy won't happen. And they might wonder why and realize that this type of communication is a bridge to the bedroom. So the better you do conflict resolution, the easier it is to get to a safe and enjoyable place of intimacy.
Yeah, in so many marriages, I've heard this so many times, and I've even done it in my own marriage where we have a disconnect in the relationship, an inability to work through conflict.
Mhm.
And people think that working through conflict means that we've all come to the same agreement. That's not necessarily the case,
Mhm.
but there is a mutual understanding, respect, and love at the end of successful confrontation,
Mhm.
right? And so oftentimes you get into these situations where, you have someone who says, we have this big issue, and I'll ask the question, what is your connection like? Well, it's not great because we can't work through this. And so people are trying to work and engage in conflict while being disconnected. And it's like you both
Mm.
have your swords drawn. One of the practices my husband and I have is that we spend a lot of time making our I love you
Mm.
believable to one another before we dive into some of the harder stuff that we might be navigating with each other. And that way, we don't allow the offense, the hurt, the bitterness, the resentment. We don't allow it the space. We keep it on, there's a short account for that stuff.
That is brilliant. And I love that phrase that we make our I love you believable.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so powerful. What would be the best goal for conflict resolution?
Yeah. The best goal is that you walk away connected and that your I love you message is even more believable. Like in the story that you
Mm.
told, I love that because you talked about how you hugged and you had the mutual goal of what the future looked like. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people take that hard stance of we can't work through this unless they agree that I'm right. But the truth is that when you have the goal of being connected, it requires a different level of self-awareness and communication than to be able to go, we have the same goal of being connected. And so we're going to fight for connection even when we don't disagree. And most people make their connection based on their ability to agree. There's a lot to that in growing in trust,
Hmm.
that a lot of marriages they're stuck. You know, a lot of people get stuck in their marriages because they say, "Oh, I could never tell my husband that." What are you doing? Like, what? That's not covenant. Like, our marriage is a covenant. And you have people that will, you know, I could never tell my husband that. He would react, it would be explosive. And then the sad truth is that then you're not actually living your covenant commitment if you're not telling the truth. But there is a respect, and there is a connection that happens when you wrestle through these things. I remember a story when I was very upset and I was very unkind to my husband, and he's very stoic. I mean, you can imagine I'm you know, loud and expressive and kind of crazy. People think I'm crazy. And then my husband is the opposite. Of course, he's the opposite. That's
Of
how it
course.
works. And so for somebody that is so stoic, just even keeled, I had said something that had really hurt his heart. And when I saw his reaction to it, I thought, oh no, I broke my marriage. I broke my marriage. I
Oh,
broke him. That was it. That was the last straw. And I was having this moment where I was sitting crying, going, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just went into full panic mode. Like, this was the thing
mm.
that I did that broke it. This was years ago. But I sat on the floor and I was crying. And my husband, he moved across the room, and though he's a bit of an athlete, he's not super flexible, and he sits down on the floor next to
Oh,
me, crisscross applesauce. That's how I knew he really loved me, because that's his least favorite way to sit. And he sits
mm.
across the floor, and he grabs my face and he just said, I don't know how we are going to get through this, but I love you and I'm not going anywhere. And
Oh,
that
wow.
changed, that just changed the dynamic of what was happening so drastically, because his goal was not to just have a solution right then and there, which is
Mm.
what most couples want. They want the solution and they want it resolved right now. But conflict is a process that you walk through. And so
Yeah.
in that moment, his I love you to me was so incredibly believable. Anxiety was chased out of the room and out
Yeah.
of our hearts and out of our relationship. And it was from there that we could then begin to navigate what led us to this point in the first
Mm.
place. It was a game changer. And so the part of conflict that I wish people could understand from the get-go, that the resolution is the icing. It's the
Mm.
icing on the cake. It's actually the ability to stay connected
Yeah.
while there's conflict. That is the main goal. That's the gift. And the resolution and the connectedness that grows in the resolution is the icing on the cake. And so just understanding that, how important that is in conflict. It's not always about the resolution, it's about the connectedness that happens in the process.
They always say the journey is more important than the destination. And when
It
you're
is.
in the process, you're on the journey. But even if you don't like them in that moment, you love them and are committed,
Yes.
and you are seeing beyond that moment, and will get there if that's where you're committed to.
Yeah.
What would you say is something that you need to do within yourself first before you bring up something that might feel like conflict to resolve?
Yeah, I always do a heart check. If I'm
Mm,
feeling anxious, if I'm feeling hurt, if I'm feeling offended or something's happened, I always look first, God, what is going on inside of my heart? Why is this triggering me? And so a trigger in is an invitation to look at what's happening inside of your heart. Perfect love casts out all fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and the one who's made perfect in love has no fear of punishment. And
wow.
so if I have a trigger response, I know that there is a dynamic happening inside of me that has not quite encountered his unconditional love yet. So I start there and go, what is happening in me? Is there a lie I'm believing? Is
Yeah.
there something happening where anger is actually a secondary emotion? It's really
Hmm.
important to understand in conflict too. So if anger is your go-to, you need to understand that under that is the true feeling and true emotion, which is usually I'm not enough, or there's some sort of shame there. And so I look at that and go, what's going on inside of me? What do I need to address? And then I go, what is my goal with this? Is my goal for this person to have understanding and connection, or is my goal to be like, forget them, I don't want anything to do with them? And so then when I decide what my goal is, then I can start making a plan on how to successfully confront the disconnect and the disrespect that I experienced.
So that is a lot of work that you are doing, but it makes a difference if you will be intentional and
Yeah.
ask yourself those questions before you start any type of resolution.
Yeah, and it's practice, 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 practice. And it's crazy
Mm,
because the more you do it, the less you actually think about it, and it just becomes
mm.
this natural thing that you do. Like I don't sit there and go, oh no, I'm offended. Oh, what am I gonna? I go, oh, that hurt. What's going on, Lord? And so the process is much quicker because I've practiced, I've made this my goal. And so I've practiced it again and again and again and again to where it's just my natural response. Like my ability to be offended. Like I'm not very good at being offended. I say that I'm not saying I don't get offended, but because that is the process that I
Mm.
use when an offense comes in. I rarely find myself, with my hands on my hip being offended about something because I go, wait, what's my goal? What's my goal? My goal is that I love you is believable and that we are connected. So I need different tools
Mhm.
than what I came into this marriage with.
And we are always ripe for learning new tools. We
Yes.
never get past new tools or practice with the tools that we have. And speaking of tools, can you break this down into steps? I should have been taking notes while you were giving that description, but what would you say are some best practices for conflict resolution if you could give steps?
Yeah, I think really just what we talked about, what's happening inside of me, going through that process before the actual conflict. And then when you are
Mhm.
in the conflict, if your goal is connection, then you are going to need to make some decisions in the conflict. So if I want to be a safe place that people can tell me the truth of how they've experienced me or how I've impacted them. And so I my first goal is to understand. Can you help me understand why you decided not to do this thing? Can you help me understand why you decided to, I don't know, key my car? I don't know, I'm just silly. But can you help me? And so my first is to really bring in I have the fruit of self-control in my life, and I
Mm.
care about this person. And so I want to understand what is going on inside of them. And so when they're telling me about, whether it's how I impacted them or why they made the decision, I am listening to understand. So I'll repeat back. So what I heard you
Mm.
say was this, da 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 da, and they'll say maybe, well, I think more like this. Okay, and so we're looking, and then once I understand, I often my posture is that I don't assume everyone has the same goal as me. And so I look at it as an
Mm.
invitation. This is an invitation. So I say, what I heard you say or what I understood, does that feel, do you feel like I understood that? They'll say, yeah, I feel really understood. Awesome. Can I tell you what I experienced? And so I ask a lot of questions and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
just force, like, well, did you know you did this to me? I don't use, like, that's not part of my vocabulary. And so,
Mhm.
it looks more like a conversation and an invitation to have a back and forth exchange of
Yeah.
truth. And I try to say on one issue at a time, because it'd be really easy to go, well, this one time, and what about that other time, and what about the other
Mhm.
time? And so, if there has been a pattern sometimes in a conversation that will look like, this isn't the first time I have felt hurt or sad when you fill in the blanks, but staying on the main issue. And I think a lot of people go, well, you being late is the issue, or you doing this thing is the issue, but really getting to the heart of the issue. And I've
Yeah.
asked people in conflict before, like, what is your goal? How do you want people to experience you? Well,
Ah.
I want to be dependable. I've had this conversation, working in church, there's a lot of volunteers. I want to be dependable. Okay, so currently we're not experiencing you as being dependable.
Mm.
So what are you going to do? And so we focus on what we're experiencing. We're listening to understand. Most people listen to respond,
Yes, yes.
and that is a different tool than listening to understand. I'm not listening to you, Mary, trying to figure out how I'm going to respond. I'm listening to you to
Mhm.
understand. And once you feel that I understand, then I'll take a moment to respond. And I think another really important thing is I love you, and affirming, like, I love you, I value you, I value this relationship, I value who you are, is really important through the process as well.
How does being able to give feedback strengthen a relationship?
I mean, it really builds trust. I mean,
Mm.
you can't have trust without truth. And it's just
Mm.
that simple. People go, "Well, you need to earn my trust." Well, how can I earn your trust if I don't know the truth of how you're experiencing me? And so it's a both and kind of thing. Trust is something that is extended or
Mm.
withdrawn, right? It is either given or withdrawn. And so I am going to trust you. And part of the way I trust you is I'm going to also tell you the truth. Hey, this is how I'm experiencing you. Is that your goal? Oh my gosh, no, it's not my goal. This is my goal. Here's how I'm going to adjust my behavior because I want there to be trust. And as that person then adjusts their behavior, whatever it is, our trust is just, it just expands, and our bond is strengthened, and it invests security for our future. Like, that is somebody that you can count on because you've been able
Mhm.
to tell them the truth, and they've received it, and they've shown you that they do have respect and love for you.
So powerful and so many nuggets there. And I'm so excited to capture some of these for the show notes because I know that everybody is going to be like, wow, this is just on fire. And thank you so much,
Thank you.
Katieann.
Thank
It
you.
shows your practice, not only that you have shared it with other people and helped them, but these are things that you do. So I really appreciate your stance and commitment. And for our audience, a simple tool that I could offer is 10 tips to start tough talks, because you can do some work within yourself to begin and then be ready to share with your spouse. And we will get a great list also in the show notes of some of Katieann's tips there that are just life changing. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mary. And until next time, let's bring back wholeness.